My home.
Thank you. It's beautiful.
Thank you so much. I think so too. I am Miss Leila, Sawyer Pappendick, but most folks used to call me Miss Leila. I hope you will too. After I married my husband, dear Mr. Edward Pappendick, I got to spend the rest of my life in this very house. Isn't it beautiful, ma'am?
Yes.
Thank you so much. You see, we owned all the nearby land, and Mr. Ed had barns out back where he kept his cattle before preparing them for the butcher shop, if you get my drift. You see, the Pappendick brothers always, for many, many years, had a meat market in Elizabeth City. Now, seeing as how this is Halloween time, I was just wondering, are any of you folks psychic? I mean, do you have the gift?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either, because if you had it, you'd know.
Yeah, right?
I do have the gift. And you see, back when I was living, you didn't tell anybody you had that gift because they would have accused you of being possessed by the devil himself. So you just kind of kept a low profile. Now, however, I have heard that today, if you have the gift, or sometimes even if you don't, you can write a book and go on this thing they call television and make a fortune. Yes, I do. I have the gift to foresee the future, and not always happily, I might add. See, one day, my poor Mr. Ed went out in his horse and his buggy to the country to buy us some more cattle for our meat market. And I was sitting in this very room, rocking my little baby boy, just holding him just like you're holding that precious little girl. He didn't feel good that night, you know, so I was just rocking him. And all of a sudden I heard the snap of a buggy whip coming from my empty parlor. Empty parlor. I got this tingling sensation down my spine, and suddenly I knew that my poor Mr. Ed was facing his death. So I put down my baby and I ran to the front door screaming, Viola, put the dinner on the warming shelf, Mr. Ed is dying. And I got to that front door and I opened it and I looked out and I looked this way and I looked that way and I couldn't see it anyway. And then finally, here comes the horse and the buggy down the street. And sure enough, my poor Mr. Ed was just slumped over the seat. Well, a friend saw him and he grabbed the horse and he brought the horse to the backyard, and my poor Mr. Ed had suffered a massive stroke and he died 2 days later, exactly like I had foreseen. But you know, don't you go feeling sorry for me, because they weren't all that kind of sad experience. See, I am a staunch Baptist woman, and I strictly forbade my boys to play cards on Sundays. They never could figure out how I knew that they were breaking that rule. So I used to tell them that I had eyes in the back of my head. I bet you some of your mothers used to tell you the self-same thing. Those boys were so clever, or so they thought. When they played cards in the summer, they would hide their cards in the parlor in the fireplace. And when they'd play in the winter, they'd stick them under my dining room table. You know, I'll bet you if you would look in that fireplace, you would still find some of those cards hanging around. What is it?
When we were in the parlor, I saw two cards sticking out.
You did? Those rascal boys of mine must have left them there. You are very smart to have seen that. Now, I was a member of First Baptist. Any of y'all members of First Baptist in this room? You don't have to say it's okay. Did y'all eat down there tonight? No, I heard they had one heck of a spread. You can tell I ate there a lot. In my town, there were many prominent names that were members of the church. Well, we had gotten so big that we started little churches. One was called Blackwell Baptist, and one was called Calvary But in the summer of 1907, our big church got into a little argument inside of itself. There was a growing problem over who was going to be the organist. You see, there were two lovely, talented ladies. One was Mrs. I.M. Meekins, and one was Mrs. E.F. Idlet. Now, they both could have had the job, but both their husbands were financial pillars of the church, and they wanted their wives to have it. I'm telling you, the row that occurred was just like fisticuffs coming to blow. I mean, I was so humiliated. I didn't know what to do. Some people favored Miss Lena Meekins, some people favored Miss Eddie Outlet. I will refrain out of respect, because you might be a possible descendant here in this room. I cannot tell. So I will not tell you which way I favor. I will just say to you that that very week, some 40 good, and I do mean good, sir, good Baptists, picked up their membership and moved to Blackwell Baptist Church, including one Mrs. Eddie Idlet, and yours truly. Now, my powers are telling me all that y'all still have a few houses to go to this evening, so I will be saying good night and a fond farewell to all of you, and have a happy, safe Halloween. Good night.